So I can basically walk away from that and say, okay, cool. Makes me uncomfortable. Let me reflect on it. Okay, now I've upgraded my truth into a better way of living.
The question that I am bringing to the table is, how do you know when what you are saying is true? And what inspired this question? Well, I think Jordan Peterson actually said that question word for word, maybe, or maybe Rogan did. I think I stole that question. But anyways, Peterson's answer to the question was, we find truth by mutually exploring structures of truth through dialogue in good faith. And like any true Jordan Peterson quote, there is so much in, like, every word he uses, like, he's very efficient with his words because there's so much meaning behind every single word in that sentence. And so there's so much wisdom in here. So that's why we got to break it down a little bit. So I kind of picked out of that sentence, which I'll repeat because it's a pretty heavy sentence. We find truth by mutually exploring structures of truth through dialogue in good faith. So I kind of picked out 3 keys to finding truth that were stated in that sentence. So the first key is that we have to explore structures of truth. And you might say, well, what is a structure of truth? Well, a structure of truth is just, to me at least, it's just something that you believe either because it was taught to you or you've had a lived experience that made you believe it, or maybe the mass media has, or the culture has told you that truth. So I think that's what a structure of truth is. It's just something that you've come to believe for whatever reason. And so the first thing we have to do, the first key to finding truth, is we have to be brave enough to acknowledge that our truth may not be true. And so this is a real easy answer, or easy question for you too, Adam, is why do you think that it's so hard for people to do that? Why do you think it's so hard for people to admit that their truth may not be true?
Yeah, good question.
Again, a softball question.
Yeah, thank you for going easy on me. Well, yeah, I think I think we've all been there. It's been a journey I've gone through the past year and a half. I think that we basically identify with our truth. We identify with our opinions or views on the world, which is why, if I say, that painting over there is pink and you say it's green, I could have basically built my whole life around, terrible analogy, but, I based my whole life around, that painting being that way, and all of a sudden it's not just you challenging, my truth, you're challenging me as a person. True, and if I have to, at least for a moment, entertain your view, it completely breaks me apart as a person. And I have to then reassemble myself based on that. Now, I think there's no way forward but to do that, to constantly let somebody pick apart your worldviews, because it's going to enhance them if you listen. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to hurt probably at times. Yeah. But it is how you enhance yourself. But also, I guess people really, and this is what I've been challenging myself to do, people really shouldn't identify with their truth, because I think as soon as they do that, they risk annihilating themselves. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. I just think, like a couple of debates I had last year, I'd really, identify with my point of view. And I was really quite shaken after those debates. I didn't really care about those points of view, right? Like, I know what you mean about it. Yeah. But I allowed them to become a part of who I was. So I felt like I was under attack. Right. And that's what I think a lot of people face. So I think it's just, you've got to say, okay, it's going to hurt. But that means you're in the uncomfortable space. And how cool is that? Now you get to almost co-design or reimagine or reassemble something that's closer to the truth.
Right.
Yeah. So that would be my answer, I think.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I was trying to think here. I lost my train of thought for a second here. But as far as why people find it hard to do, I think you're right that it is because you identify with your beliefs so much. And I guess something that I read once or heard once that I always try to come back to is that other people's opinions or other people's thoughts have absolutely nothing to do with you. Like, even if they're about you, like say somebody thinks I'm a jerk, that really has nothing to do with me. That's more about them than it is about me, because that's based on, so now somebody calls me a jerk and I think I'm a nice person. So then all of a sudden now my truth, if I hold on to that truth, yeah, like you said, that's going to shake my whole world. Where really it's just that this person has a different truth because of what they've experienced in their life, and maybe the way I act is triggering something that happened to them before. And so I guess that's I guess that's more of a helpful tip, I guess, than anything. But for some reason that was coming to my mind.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Just to keep that in mind, and that but yeah, I think that identifying, oh, that's what I was thinking of. Okay, it brought me back to the music thought, or the music topic. So I think that is the order part. So your truth is the order. And if you never step away from that, you're gonna end up bored at some point.
Yeah.
If you just want to stick with your own truth all the time.
Mm.
So maybe
I think
that's how you
true.
find meaning too, is by stepping away from your own truth a little bit.
Yes. Well, yeah, we don't like being uncomfortable, I don't think.
No, of course not. I mean, some people are more comfortable being uncomfortable than others, but
yeah, like, but I guess it'll be in that the second or the third point you're going to talk about is having these discussions in good faith.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a better example of a person that I can have the conversations with in good faith, and I think that's what Rogan and Peterson are about. He specifically talks about that, is that he feels comfortable. He knows he's not, Rogan's not playing games with him in that interview and trying to sneak an agenda in there. He's just interested in a dialogue, and that's what Amanda and I do. That's why if Amanda throws, throws a view out there that's different to my truth or whatever it is, the first time it happened, it was uncomfortable, but I know it's in good faith. So I can basically walk away from that and say, okay, cool. Makes me uncomfortable. Let me reflect on it. Okay, now I've upgraded my truth into a better way of living.
Right.
And that's a key component. So I won't jump too far ahead.
I was gonna say, well, that's kind of the second point, but no.
Sorry.
That was a great segue, because the second key that I picked out of the sentence was that we have to explore mutually. So we have to explore structures of truth mutually with someone else, because you can't find the truth by yourself, which is what we were just kind of ending that last part of the conversation on. And so I think we have to be humble enough to know that someone else's truth might be true. And that really, when I was thinking about that really reminded me of the scientific method, which when scientists go into an experiment or when they're doing research or whatever, they go into it with a hypothesis, and their approach is to prove that hypothesis wrong. Where so many of us, and we see this all the time in media, and I keep saying media, but I don't even just mean media, but I mean just TV, movies, music. Well, not music, but I guess when I say media, I don't mean just like news media. I just mean media in general. We see so much of it where it's just the opposite, where people are trying to prove themselves right. Well, and even our algorithms, like you look at Google algorithms, or even Instagram, Facebook, whatever, all the algorithms, they're trying to give you things that support what you already believe. So it's, you're constantly reinforcing your own truth. And so it's exactly the opposite of the way that the scientific method would work, where you're trying to disprove your truth. And I think that's what we need to do a little bit more, is try to prove ourselves wrong. And so, so the big question, here's another big question, is how do you think the world would be impacted if we were able to do that? If we were able to try to prove ourselves wrong?
Hugely. I was talking to Amanda about another video that she sent me of Peterson, which is, it's titled, I love the title. It was something like, Jordan Peterson thinks we need more dangerous men, right?
Yeah.
And you read that and people are like, dangerous men, oh my God, what are you talking about? But like, watch the video. It's a good way to hook you in. But dangerous men are men, and when he says men, I think it's obviously we know people. But, dangerous men are the ones that will actually do that. That will say, hey, I know that this is a sacred cow of a subject, that even entertaining that there's something else here for us to talk about is dangerous.
Yeah.
But when people are weak-willed and they're like, no, I won't do that because I'm terrified that of the reprisal or the repercussions of me discussing that. But I just think, that we're so stuck right now, and people always talk about being PC.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know, as Rogan said on that interview, there's sacred cows that even comedians are not allowed to touch, and we know what they are. And you just, because this is a closed subject, we will not discuss it anymore. This is the only truth there. And if you come in and try and even discuss something not concordant with that truth, you are prejudiced.
Right.
And I just think that's so harmful.
It is.
I just, I think. And it's because people are scared. And hey, I'm scared too. There was a topic that we were going to hit today, and it was talking about gender norms and gender fluidity, and the trans community. And I was scared to talk about it. And I'm scared because, again, I don't feel like the world, or at least the communities, the big communities surrounding us right now, are prepared to talk about things in good faith. It is. If you start to talk about something and steer away from the main narrative of society, you are having a go and you are prejudiced and you are trying to, that's all it is. You're discriminating people and you are being prejudiced. And I just think that's not how the world should be. It was the same with Peterson talking about that Bill C-16 or whatever it was. He wasn't trying to come in and say, hey, and I'm sure people would get fiery about me even entertaining this, but just saying, I don't think he was going in there to say I'm transphobic and I don't believe that, the trans community have important things to say. He was just saying, let's just consider the other side of what could happen here if we do put this in law and start playing with linguistics and things like that. So I just think the world would be a lot better served if we did that. But, a big step is we need to mutually explore, as you said, and just do it in good faith, to say that I'm not trying to one-up you, you're not trying to one-up me. We are just trying to explore something to enhance that meaning. And again, I think it would, coming back to your analogy, would charge the battery a lot quicker.
Right.
But right now, the main players in the world don't even want to entertain that. So it's tricky because you've got to convince some big groups and some people that, hey, how about we entertain this idea? And they're closed off. They don't even want to go there. So,
well, of course. Yeah. Well, and like you said, it is scary. And I guess it's hard to want to prove yourself wrong. You know what I mean? Because it just kind of goes, I think it goes again, and it's probably not that way for everyone in all the world, but at least in our culture, like that's just not, we're not taught to prove ourselves wrong. We're really not, if you think about it. And just even if you think of the way that we're graded at school, the way we're evaluated at work, all these things, it's like that's just not a part of our culture, unfortunately.
No.
So maybe we need to learn a little bit from the scientists. But we all need to be a little more scientific.
That was wise. That's a good quote that I'm going to sit
good
for a while. Thank you.
Good. But because I'm like, I don't know if I'm just like rambling here or not, but I'm glad something hit.
No, it was good. It was good.
But really, I've been trying to do that. So since I've been thinking about this, I have been I wouldn't say I've been necessarily trying to prove myself wrong, but I've been trying to I've been trying to approach conversations with more of curiosity than coming into it stating my assumption first, because a lot of times when you come into a conversation, at least I know I do, more of a confrontational conversation, it seems like you usually come at it from your point of view and the assumption that you've made, and then you're like trying to get the other person to say, almost to prove why your assumption isn't right, instead of saying, okay, maybe my assumption is wrong. What's really going on here? And I think, does that make any sense?
It does. It's a big concept though. So I'm
like, I don't know if that makes any sense the way that I'm explaining it. But like so I'll give an example. So like, so I've had a couple instances with my daughters this week, and now I'm trying to think of one that I actually want to talk about publicly. No, I just want to be careful and be sensitive to them. But it would be, I know there would be one there that'd be a good example. So like, okay. So like my daughter, Emma, my biological daughter, Emma, because I have stepdaughter, Emma, and a biological daughter, Emma. She tends to be one that kind of puts things off, and I tend to not be that way. And then I make the assumption that she's not going to get something done because she's not doing it the way that I would do it, I guess is the point. So I've been trying to address that differently with her, where I will ask her. So like, say, like yesterday, she was supposed to sort her laundry. She didn't do it when I thought she should have done it. So I could go into that and go to her and say, why haven't you sorted your laundry yet? You're supposed to sort your laundry, blah, 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 and get in your face about it. But instead, I went to her and asked her what her plan was as far as, what are you thinking? When are you going to do this? And she had a plan and she did it. So it's like, she didn't have to do it my way to get it done.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and that's a very simple, maybe silly example.
No, good example. Good example.
But I think that, man, if you could expand that into bigger issues where you address them that way, where like, okay, take your view out of it and how you would do it, and try to find out more about the other person and why they're doing it the way they are.
Yeah.
Because maybe the way they're doing it is a lot better than the way you would do it.
Yes, that's good. I definitely, yeah. I could even say like that was one of the biggest like learnings I had when I was at the bank as a leader, is that I wanted things done my way.
Right.
So again, it would be, why aren't you doing things the way that I've prescribed you to do them? Because that works for me, and you know, I've obviously done well for myself. Ego. But anyways, they would have different ways of doing it. So it's like, yeah, as you say, you just ask the question, what is your plan to achieve this thing?
Yeah.
Talk me through it, and you know, as long as it seems feasible, cool, go for it. Right. And parenting is the best example of that, isn't it? Like it is. We parent off, the only reference we've really got for parenting is probably how our parents parented us, what we like, what we didn't like, and what's, you know, what we think's important from our values, I guess. But yeah, we've got to be so careful not to demand that that our kids do things the way that we think so. Another example with my daughter is they bring home their readers every day. Mm-hmm. And for a while there, when she was learning to read, you know, Rose would really struggle some days. She'd just be like, you know, and have no energy. And my dad said to me, he was like, why do you force her to do it each time? Like, just ask her, do you want to read today? Yeah. You know? And I started doing that. And some days she's like, yeah, I want to read. I'm excited. She'd read and she'd blitz through it and it'd be great. Other days, I'm really tired, Dad. Okay. Yeah. And you don't do it. And so it stopped making it this really like, oh my God, I have to do it every day. It's because in my mind, I thought, if I don't do the readers with her every day, I'm a bad parent. You know? Right. So it's coming from a good place, but at the same time, it wasn't picking up on what she needed. So I needed to take that step out and say, well, what do you want? Because maybe giving her that space to not do it after school that day meant she had more energy the next day and she learned a lot more. So, yeah.
And you found the truth that way, because you found the truth of that.
Mutually
that's what she needed in order to be energetic about reading and to enjoy it instead of being resentful about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're going to do more of that.
That's awesome. But no, while you're saying that, I'm like, well, maybe that's how. So my question was, how do you think you could impact the world if you approached it by assuming you're wrong? Well, maybe that's the best way to impact the world, is to do it through our kids. Or if you don't have kids, you probably have someone that you mentor or someone that you have some influence over.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best way to do it. Right
think
there.
so.
Yeah.
We're too far gone. We're going to take years to deal with all this crap. So,
Yeah, exactly.
work with something that is going to be easy.
Right. All right. So then the third key to finding the truth is to, well, we've talked about this a little bit too, but to engage in dialogue in good faith, because your intentions in the conversation have to be sincere, and you can't pretend that you're trying to understand someone else's viewpoint when all you're really trying to do is either win an argument or convince them that your truth has to be the only truth. So I guess another way of saying all that is just that you had to leave your ego at the door.
Yeah.
So, but when I was writing this, I was thinking about the last conversation that we taped that we recorded. I'm dating myself here. Yeah, we got the real going back here. So. But the last episode that we recorded, you were talking about some difficult conversations you had with people, and I think that you used this method, like these three keys, because I think you did acknowledge that your truth was not the only truth. I think that you acknowledge that the other person might have some valid points, and that what they were saying could also be true. But when you're having those conversations, and maybe just you could briefly say what I'm referring to here, but when you're having those conversations, how did you keep your ego in check when you were having those?
It's difficult. Definitely difficult.
I imagine that it was, but you did it somehow.
There's a problem too, right? I think that we've got to acknowledge is when you go into a conversation following these 3 steps, at least at first, I don't know, I'd be keen for your thoughts on this. You go in with a sense of, especially if you've initiated the conversation, you almost go into this discussion with a sense of maybe not superiority, I don't know what the word is, but you're going in feeling like, look at me, I'm the bigger person.
True.
I'm opening this dialogue.
That's a good point.
Better our situation. And so as the initiator, you're going in thinking, I've already got a few points on the scoreboard,
So that's the first time you got to check your ego.
Yeah. So you got to check it and say, no, yes, okay, you've initiated it, but nonetheless, just consider it initiated. Stop thinking about you being the initiator, because it may influence your ability to hear the other person. And throughout these conversations, as I said, will be uncomfortable. They'll be uncomfortable because you'll present your thoughts and your truth. That will then come under the scrutiny of their truth. And it'll be that defining moment, because again, they'll be talking about their truth again, which won't be consistent with yours. Yeah. And then you will feel under threat. So that's where you need to say, it's okay. My ego feels under threat, and that's just normal. That's what it's designed to do. But I now need to take a step out of that, or leave it at the door, as you said, and work with this. Okay, let's entertain it with an open mindset. So, this is what they're saying. And I think when you do that, you can start to really weave together a new truth. But yeah, it's tricky. You have to be really present. I guess it's that presence thing. You cannot allow yourself to drift away. Be present, listen with an open mind, and just acknowledge that you will, if your ego pops up, it's okay. You're not a bad person. You're just a normal person. But you do need to take action. You can't just let yourself settle into feeling under attack, because that you may as well not have that conversation unless you're prepared to be open, I suppose.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, and you can't also, when you're saying that, you also have to go into it not without making the assumption that the other person is there in good faith, because the other person might not be there in good faith, but you still need to remain in good faith somehow. So that could be very tough to do too. But maybe at that point, the best thing to do is just to leave the just be done with it. It's like, okay, we're not going to find truth. And maybe that's it, because maybe you do enter some of these difficult conversations with people, maybe someone you're having a problem with for whatever reason. And maybe you find out that you're not going to find the truth together. And that's okay too, I think, because there's some people that you're just not going to be able to come to mutual truth, because and I don't know that you even have to both come to the same truth, but whatever. But what Peterson was talking about too is he was saying that because when he's talking about mutually exploring structures of truth, so he was saying, you add something to your conversation from your lived experience, the other person adds something, and then you each kind of give and take a little bit. You're like, okay, I don't like this part of what I said, so I'm going to leave that alone. I like this part of what this person said. That makes sense to me. So let's add that to the truth. And then you just kind of whittle it away until you have something that resembles truth, or as much truth as there can be. Because that's the thing. I don't know if anything can ever be true, because it can always probably be disproven somehow.
Yeah.
But that's the purest. Yeah. If you could go through that process, that's the closest you're going to get to truth.
Yes. I think it's a healthy way of looking at it.
Your own perceptions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. As you were chatting, I was thinking about Rogan and Peterson's interview, and just how they practice what they preach. They literally follow these 3 steps.
They really did, yeah.
And I just imagine, if it had gone a different way, a perfect case in point is Peterson knows his stuff. Nonetheless, Rogan's prepared to call him out on some things.
Did like, there's some times, a lot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like he'll just say, "What do you mean by that?"
Right.
Or if Peterson gets too carried away, probably because when you're with a friend, sometimes they get a little bit excitable. Yeah. I certainly do. And you Amanda's like, "Oh yeah," but it's a case where he'll pull him back. He'll be like, "Okay, stop for a second.
Right.
What are you talking about? Bring it back to what you're talking about." Oh, okay. Now imagine if Peterson would be like, "I can't believe you dare to challenge my point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
This is over, this conversation." No, they don't do that, and they explore some truths mutually, and they come out with a better view, like the music thing.
Yeah.
That's the big thing for me. Is Peterson says it's a non-representational art form, and Rogan says, "What are you talking about? It represents the emotion of the person writing it." Now they sit there and they explore that, and Peterson at the end says, "Yeah, no, I'll give you that. I think so. It does represent emotion." Yeah. So he's, but at the same time, he's still holding that. Truth.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's still holding that it's, it's a different art form to a painting or a picture or something. But still, he's considering, yes, it does represent emotion. He's not getting frustrated about it. He's enhanced his view. He can now walk off, and next time he has that conversation, we'll have a different lens.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I think we just need to get better at that. And that's what I think both of us want from this podcast.
True.
Because, we had a chat, last week, I think it was. Or was it last week? I don't know. Anyways, we had a chat about, what is settling's not an option?
Oh, yeah.
Because one of our guests had asked us, well, what exactly is the meaning or the purpose of this show? And it was like, I don't know. It's changed, actually.
It's changed, yeah.
It started as, how do we help people not settle for a bad job? And that could get really boring after a while. There's only so much you can talk about bad jobs or bad relationships. Again, we've explored that a little bit. But no, it was something that, Amanda and I agreed. This is about don't settle for the way you view the world. It's exactly concordant with this, the exploration of truth. Sit down in good faith and explore it. That's what we've done over however many episodes now. We're exploring different truths. And I think both of us have come out a lot more informed about it than if we hadn't explored these truths in good faith.
Well, yeah, definitely. But yeah, you're right. And I hadn't thought of it that way. But that really is what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so well done us.
We're so awesome.
People are like, oh my God, look at this. But no, I think